Awesome, we're live. Hi everyone, welcome to another edition of the Remote Tribe podcast. I'm Andrew Williams, the founder of Remote Tribe. We are a digital nomad blog and community, and we talk about living decentralized, living everywhere and anywhere. And we've tried to bring you guests from all over the world. And today we've got Nicole, who is living in South America right now, and she's traveled a bit there. And we're going to talk about Buenos Aires in specifically and Argentina, maybe a bit more about Argentina as well. But we're going to focus on Buenos Aires today because there are a lot of questions coming, and with the change of the government, people are very curious about what's going on there, and people are looking to invest as well. And so, Nicole, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and let's start chatting about Buenos Aires.
Yeah, thank you for having me back on the show, Andrew. It's my second time here. I love talking about Latin America. I've been in Latin America for about 2 years now, which is wild. Time totally flies. Currently in Mexico. We'll be heading back down to Paraguay, Uruguay, Argentina, Brazil in coming months. But so what we do is we help our clients to obtain additional residencies, citizenships, bank accounts, trust formations, potentially if needed globally. And Latin America is hot right now. I talk a lot on my podcast and channel about all of the different opportunities in Latin America. So today we're really going to hone in on Argentina, what some of the opportunities and of course just the lifestyle in general looks like there. So I'm excited to dive in.
Yeah, just before that, so tell me, Nicole, what are the main questions about Buenos Aires that you get and about the lifestyle in Argentina, just before jumping into that?
Yeah, well, I definitely get a lot on residency. I would say every day I have multiple inquiries about what the residency options look like, which is definitely a deep dive, which I'm sure we probably won't go into so much detail today because that could be a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
But that's very interesting for a lot of people, especially how it could lead fairly quickly into a citizenship, quickly compared to quite a few other countries. But also from the lifestyle perspective, what it looks like for an expat, for somebody who is considering becoming a resident or a citizen there. What does the lifestyle look like? Where are the safe areas to be? Is the city unsafe? Where are the places to go, the places to hang out? Get some real estate questions as well. Not so many, I will say, compared to other countries in Latin America, but a few interesting options for real estate, pricing and whatnot. But actually one thing that you mentioned off of air, which is very interesting, I think to people, of course, moving there, but also who are just interested in traveling, is the prices, inflation and rent and what that looks like.
Yeah.
I know we'll dive into.
Absolutely, yeah. And talking about that, let's chat about the history a bit. So I don't know if a lot of people know that watch us, but Buenos Aires, as the name says, it means good air, and it was actually a Spanish colony. Obviously, Argentina was colonized by Spain in around 1580, 1536, something like that. And then it was a big trading center on the 18th and 19th century. And then there was a big population boom in the 19th and 20th century after World War II and before, actually before World War I up to the end of World War II when people fled the war. And that's why Argentina and Buenos Aires specifically feels a lot like Europe, because you've got a lot of Italian and Spanish people descent from these countries. And actually a lot of people from Argentina, they have either Italian passports or Spanish passports. So for them, it's also very easy to come and work in Europe and live in Europe. So, and the city is being built in a Spanish way. It's kind of a really nice mix between Spain and France, I would say. That was my feeling. And, they also had a dictatorship during World War II. And right now it has a population of about 14 million, including the metropolitan area. So it's quite a big city. And there's plenty of stuff to do. So, Nicole, what was your experience overall? Like, what was your feeling when you were there in terms of the lifestyle? Does it really compare to Europe? And what was it safe?
Yeah, so I will definitely say in anybody going to, especially Buenos Aires for the first time, you feel like you're in Europe. And having traveled to most of the other Latin American countries at this point, I can definitely say there is no other city, at least that I have been to, in Latin America that has the same feel. It really does feel like you're in the center of Europe. The architecture, the buildings, it's just stunning. And that's in most of the city, of course, not the entire city, but most of the city, especially, of course, the central areas, the areas where as an expat, you'll probably be wanting to hang out. It is just so beautiful. Now, in terms of safety, so I will say there were, not that it was unsafe, there were certain areas. So we were really in the financial district, which is just the heart of the most beautiful architecture. It's absolutely stunning. You will see quite a
What's
bit.
the name of? Do you remember the name of the neighborhood there?
I don't remember the name of the neighborhood. I can find it for you afterward. But if you look up the financial district, you'll see it there.
Okay.
And it's absolutely stunning. But in terms of the homelessness and poverty, and now this may have changed. We were there about 6 months ago, and since then they have had a new president. So I haven't been on the ground. We definitely will be going very soon, but I haven't been on the ground with the new president, with Malay in power. But there was definitely quite a bit of homelessness, which I think we all hear when we are looking at Buenos Aires and the potential for living and staying there longer term. There definitely is some homelessness. Nothing that I would say is frightening or jarring or would stray you away from wanting to stay in that area. But at night, it was something that I was a little bit more cautious about walking
But
around at night.
did you guys walk during the night? Because in South America, a lot of people just take the car or the Uber everywhere. So I'm just wondering if you guys actually walked in the night on the streets. And how
Yeah,
was
we
that?
did. We definitely did. Like we would go and get, like a snack or something like that. And we were very close. Again, I don't know the name, but there's one in the financial district, there's a walking street, and that's the main street right at the main square. You're going to find that walking street. And so there is, there's food, there's empanadas, there's all of the things that you can get late at night. And so we would walk there, and our Airbnb was actually quite close. It was probably about 10-15 minute walk. So we would walk at night sometimes, and we did have internet, we had data. So, we have some safety precautions. I wouldn't say, like I said, it's not a place where I personally felt a lot less safe in Colombia. Colombia was my least favorite country in Latin America. And the poverty and the drug use on the streets is very blatant. It was very different in Argentina. And it was actually a little bit more sad, quite honestly, because you would see families with dogs. We saw one family on the main walking street, and they had 3 dogs, and they had like a tent and all of their belongings with them. And it's not that they are bad people. It's just that bad circumstances have happened.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's quite sad. And also, Buenos Aires looks like a super rich city, and it's very weird to see these discrepancies. It's extremely awkward, honestly. Like for me, it was also shocking. But hopefully this stuff will improve and people's lives will get better, because it's also a big country, and economically they've done really bad in the last 40 years, I would say. So let's see how that goes. Okay, that's great. So I think the neighborhood you mentioned was maybe Recoleta or something like that. Do you remember? No, not really.
Yeah, so there are various different areas. We stayed more in the financial district, but there's Recoleta, which is beautiful. I would say more so if you're looking for a family area. It's beautiful, trees, overhanging bushes, more of a residential area, I would say. And then there's also Palermo. So Palermo, I'm sure probably if most people have been, that's where you'll say if you don't have a family. There's a lot of bars, restaurants, of course, empanadas everywhere. For I think it's like 60 cents per empanada, just wild pricing. But and then there's Palermo Soho and Palermo Hollywood, a few different areas. I personally, in terms of beauty, Palermo, the bar streets and the walking areas where as an expat you'll probably want to be going at night is really nice. But if you're really looking for that grand architecture, you're going to want to stay closer to the center, the financial district. That is where that's going to be. And then we actually went to it was the oldest cafe. I don't remember if it was in Latin America or in the country. It was called Cafe Tortoni, I believe it was. And it was just like going back in time. It was really
amazing.
A cool experience. I recommend that.
There are quite a few amazing bars. I recommend people to look over on Instagram and just look for cool Buenos Aires or something like that. There are some amazing places to explore in Buenos Aires, from great design, great food, great coffee shops, and there are more and more places like that opening. So it has a lot to offer from the architectural perspective and also from the food perspective. I think you've got new places, old places, speakeasy bars. It's really cool, and I've heard a lot of them there are more and more things coming up as the economy is improving. So I think from what I've seen and read, also a lot of people recommend Recoleta, Palermo, and the financial issues that you're saying. I did check the prices before going live. You can still find a decent studio or one bedroom in these areas for somewhere around $400 to $600. So obviously, the higher the better, but up to 600, it's pretty good, I would say. Do you remember how much you paid?
So I will say that is not accurate pricing at all,
Okay.
actually. And I do find, when you look online, there can be a wide range of things. If you're looking for probably like a very small studio in not a great area, you could probably get that price. But if you're looking to rent either as a resident living there or for Airbnb, and this was an interesting part of actually being in Buenos Aires, in Argentina in general, but specific to Buenos Aires, because we did travel to a few other cities as well, is that while the cost of living in terms of food, eating out can be quite low, the rent was astronomically high in comparison. So as an example, we got a very standard Airbnb. It was one bedroom. It was not huge. It was in the financial center. And on Airbnb, I believe for 1 month, so you get the monthly discount on Airbnb, we paid about, in US dollars, it was probably around $1,000 US. So of course, Airbnb is a little bit higher, and it was a great location, I will say. It was not in Palermo or in Recoleta. I would say you're probably looking at least a few hundred more for those areas. But it was still a beautiful area in the financial district. It is quite high. So that's one thing that I was shocked by. We also started looking for longer term because we were debating staying there for a few more months. In Buenos Aires, we ended up going to a few other cities. And we were looking on Facebook Marketplace, which I would not recommend to buy there. There's a lot of scams there, but just to get an idea of what the pricing looks like, I say if you're interested, just head over to Facebook Marketplace and look at the pricing. And for a longer term lease, we were looking at probably around 800 to 1,000 USD per month. So that was one thing. And locals will tell you that as well, is that pricing in terms of rent and living. And if you're looking to buy a property, you could easily be looking at $1 million US. It is not like a Paraguay market. It's quite a bit higher. You're looking at more Uruguay prices, which is definitely a higher price point for that.
Why is that, Nicole? How is that even possible? Why are they valued so high? Because, is it the exchange rate or what's the...
I don't know the logic behind it. I just know the pricing. I do think probably the exchange rate has a lot to do with it. The locals, as probably anybody who's looked into Argentina knows, the locals have quite a hard time getting by because of the inflation, which I know you mentioned has gone down a little bit since we visited and the new president. But it's very interesting. And that was one thing I expected the cost of living in terms of rent and purchasing a property to be quite low. And that is not at all the case.
Yeah, I'm looking on Numbeo here, which is a website that compares living costs from all over the world. And they're saying somewhere around 500, but probably it's not being updated. Probably the prices went up quite significantly. So you said around 1,000, which is basically double. I'm guessing the food prices are the same, more or less, because this is what you mentioned as well. Like, this is a comparison with Houston, Texas, and overall the prices are basically half the price. I would think in some cases it's even more. Like, for example, I was looking at a taxi, which is 80% less, 70% less than in the States. So some things are quite cheap there. I guess going out is still pretty decent, and the quality of food you get is really good, especially for a meat lover. The wine is probably still pretty cheap. Again, taxi, moving around, the bills are pretty cheap. But yeah, probably the rent would be the major cost as a digital nomad or
wine. Actually, on that point, the wine is, because a lot of it is made in Mendoza in Argentina, is so affordable. You can get amazing wine for a few US dollars, maybe less. Food is pretty standard, I would say, to the pricing that you can see here. It was quite affordable. I actually did a reel, and I can share that link with you, of a grocery shop in Argentina. And I'm always curious about people's opinions and prices. I have a few on Paraguay as well. So maybe I can send that to you to share, because it's really interesting. It was like $20 US for an almost complete grocery haul.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Considering the prices now in Canada and the US, like you see these TikTok videos and Instagram reels, it's unbelievable.
Wild.
Like tens of dollars just for an item. It's insane. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the prices look very decent. Like if you look at the comparison here, everything is half price. I would say again more. But yeah, just keep in mind that the rent would be higher than stated here. We're gonna leave the link in the description in the YouTube video. So Nicole, you're saying you did some research on how to rent in Buenos Aires, and the best choice was Airbnb. Are there other better choices to choose from?
They actually have some really nice hotels. Again, the hotels are not inexpensive, I would say, if you're looking for
Mhm.
that. We like Airbnb because we did have a kitchen and whatnot. It depends if you're looking for longer or shorter term. If you're
Yeah.
looking for longer term, like I said, Facebook Marketplace is great to get an idea of pricing, but go through an agent. What I actually found was, and we do have a great agent that we work with in Buenos Aires specifically, but what I found on Facebook, we were messaging a few people just trying to understand what the deposit looked like,
Hmm.
and almost everybody, and we didn't do it, we weren't going to go through with it, so I'm not sure if it was a scam or not, but I highly would recommend to not do this. Everybody asked us to send the initial deposit, like the first month or first 2 months, something like that, rent, to their bank account. And so you could go to the bank, they would give you their bank number. And before even seeing the place, they wanted you to deposit the
That's very
money.
weird.
And so we were
Yeah.
like, no, do not recommend. But it is a good way to get a general idea of monthly, either renting for 6 or 12 plus months, of what the price point is going to look like there.
What was the minimum rental agreement? Was it 3 months, 6 months? Do you remember?
Yeah, so in most of Latin America, what I find through working with our agents is minimum 6 months, especially if you are not a resident, more so 12 months is what they're going to want
Hmm.
you to see. Probably if you're staying there longer term, you're going to get residency or you already have residency, but usually 6 months minimum, 12 months is more ideal. They really want that longer term time frame.
And the deposit would be one or two rents, I guess.
It depends. So I'm not so familiar with what that looks like for Argentina. I do know for a few other countries what that looks like, but typically it'll be 2 months. They want the 2 months, and then that's kind of like the deposits. You pay the rent. In Latin America, I don't love doing 2 months. Sometimes it
Yeah.
is absolutely required, and a lot of the times you can negotiate. Sometimes you can't, but a lot of the times after that 12 months or whatever the period for the leases is finished, they're gonna try somehow to either keep both of those months or keep one of those months and find a damage or find something that was wrong with it, increase the utility bills, something like that. So I recommend giving the least amount as possible. And then also sometimes you need a guarantor. So you will need a local person
Well,
who will
okay.
be able to be your guarantor. If not, then that 2 months is almost always going to be required.
And then Nicole, talking about that, how long can you stay in Argentina as a U.S. citizen or European citizen? Do you know on a tourist visa, and then also on a tourist visa first of all?
Yeah, I believe it's 3 months. 3 or 6 is usually standard. I believe it was 3 months for myself on my Canadian passport, but depending on the country, it's usually 3 or 6 months. But then if you're wanting to stay longer, which is usually what we help with, I'm not
Hmm.
exactly too sure the times for visitor visas because that's pretty standard. Argentina, for the most part, doesn't require much or any documentation to actually enter the country. So you can just enter on your passport. If you're looking for residency, then that's more so what we would help with,
Hmm.
which is, yeah, a whole nother can of worms for what that looks like.
Yeah, so I just Googled it. For the UK citizens, it's about 90 days, and I'm guessing it's the same for EU citizens in Argentina. So you can stay for 3 months, no problem in Argentina. How easy it is to get the temporary residency if they have something like that? What do you need? What's the eligibility there?
There are quite a few ways to qualify, actually, but they're not all easy ways.
Hmm.
So you need to have some sort of passive income for one option to qualify. You need to have a pension, which of course not everybody has, in order to qualify as another option. You can start a business in the country, but as with any company formation, it needs to be a real true business that's hiring locals and will have employees. So a paper business and a business plan is not going to cut it. Those are the most common ways. We can also help if none of those fit the individual situation. Sometimes we can help depending on their situation to get employed by a local company.
Hmm.
So that is also an option. Obviously, there's some more fees and accounting and taxes with
Sure.
that. But it's very specific to the individual, I find, especially for Argentina, because there are so many ways to qualify, but there's only, I'm trying to think how to word it best. Within each of those ways to qualify, there's only a few people are going to qualify for that option. For example, the pensioner option, not everybody is going to qualify for that. For the rentista option, you have to have that passive income. So not everyone's going to qualify for that. So a lot of the times we work with the individual and we get a little bit creative on what that could look like, or potentially other options that they could work their way toward PR and citizenship if Argentina is not a fit.
Do you get a lot of requests? Like, did you see an increase in requests in people wanting to move to Argentina, or it's just like a dream of a lot of people that is not really happening?
A lot of people are interested in the residency. I think a lot of people, really what the end goal is the citizenship, because in 3 to 4 years' time, you can have that passport in hand. Of course, it depends on bureaucracy and wait times. It's a civil law system, so you have to go through a judge. So it definitely can be a longer process. That's why I usually say 3 to 4 years on average. It can be a little bit less. It could potentially be more as well. They really want to see that you're integrated into the society, the judge does, before giving you that travel document, of course. But that's why I see a lot of people are interested in it. But it does require you, like I said, to be integrated into society, to live there, to pay your taxes there. Taxation goes as high as up to 35%. So, definitely not a low tax country, but it can be worth it for the right person.
Is it progressive or is 35% flat?
Progressive.
Okay, it's not that bad. It's still lower than Europe, I think. So
well, it's pretty low amounts, quite honestly, that you'll hit the 35%. So yeah, it's not a low taxing place. It's kind of the opposite of Paraguay, but it's a very different lifestyle from Asuncion, from Paraguay. So
I remember you mentioned that. Yeah. So Nicole, do you have to go through, what's the process? Do you have to go through a temporary residency, then permanent residency, and then citizenship, or can you skip some of these steps? What's the process?
Yeah, so you have to get your TR first, so your temporary residency. And then after 2 years of living there, you can technically qualify. You're not going to get the passport, but you can qualify for citizenship. And then after 3 years, you can qualify for PR. So it's kind of a bit of a backwards system. A few other countries do it similar, though. So it just depends on really what you're looking for. Like I said, a lot of people are really wanting that citizenship. So qualified 2 years, but takes about 3 to 4 years, depending on the case, where they're coming from, the country, their passport country as well, the judge that they get. So there are a few different factors. Our lawyers will help push that process a little bit, but there's only so much you can do, especially in a civil law system. But yeah.
So in your experience, it's about 4 years from the moment you get the permanent residency or the moment you enter the country?
Temporary residency. The moment that you get the TR, so not the moment that you enter the country, because then you'll just be on the tourist visa, but from the moment that your application goes through, you get the TR, the temporary residency, then you'll work your way toward that citizenship. If you're staying in the country for 6 months a year, paying your taxes there,
you have to
understanding the language, you also have to know some Spanish. In technicality, you don't, but the judge will be speaking to you in Spanish. So that's part of the kind of trial to go through to get that citizenship as well.
It's not actually that bad, because in Europe it's mostly in some countries it's 5 to 6 years. In the UK it's about 6 years. I know in Italy it's 10 years, so it's quite a long time. It's very hard to get Switzerland 10 years, so it's actually a pretty good deal.
Yeah, which is why I think we have so many people coming through wanting that option, because in terms of naturalization, it's one of the fastest countries for naturalization. But you can't be so nomadic and traveling while you're working your way towards
you're a bit stuck there, kind of. Yeah, so 6 months a year you have to spend them in Argentina. Can be good, can be bad, depending if you like the place. So let's talk more about that, Nicole. So how do you find going out? Was it very social? Were the people really social, just like in Spain, where people go out really late and they eat out and they stay late? How was it?
Definitely. Yeah. If you're in the right area, not so much, I would say, for the financial district, the walking street, everything kind of closes around. And it was actually, I was surprised at how early, probably around between 10 to 11, things are starting to close. But if you're on a Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, you're out, probably I would say Palermo is really where you want to be. If you're going out, you're looking for the best restaurants, the best food. Yeah, things can definitely stay open quite late. The locals, the tourists, of course, will stay out quite late, and there's so much to do, so many different bars to explore. We didn't even get to explore all of the areas while we were there. That's why we'll be going back in the future.
And how do you move around with the metro or with the Uber, with the cab? How was it?
There's a lot of traffic, a lot of traffic. So we found Metro to be the fastest. We did take a few Ubers, especially at night. Of course, it's going to be a lot faster. But in the daytime, I would say if you want to get somewhere quickly, the Metro is going to be the fastest place, and it connects to all of the main places that you're going to want to see. It's quite an extensive Metro, but yeah, it just depends really what you're looking for in terms of Uber or Metro.
Absolutely. Did you manage to see any of the museums around there, or the Opera House, Teatro Colonna? I know there's some amazing architecture and museums as well.
We did not actually go inside any of, as far as I'm remembering, any of the museums, the opera house. But what I would recommend is to, especially when you're in that financial district hub, just walk around. There's so many little stores that you can go in. There's the Plaza de Mayo, which is there'll be walking tours everywhere there, free walking tours, which we love to do. It's very interesting because they share a lot about the history, the Perones, and kind of how the unfortunate downturn of the economy started. Really interesting history to actually hear how they got to the point where you see today when you're in Argentina, but you actually hear the behind the scenes of what that looks like. So I recommend just going to that area, walking around, popping in and out of different places. And there's a lot of little cafes, restaurants, and also really cool experiences. We did a really fun empanada making steak, because of course, they're known for their steak experience. So
Absolutely.
a lot of things you can do there. I will say that when booking online, you would probably think that a lot of these experiences are going to be on the medium cost end, but it was quite a few $100s actually to go to an experience. So they definitely cater to tourists and not to the local pricing.
Yeah, so I think the advice here is just get local friends, just befriend someone, and you get the local prices, which are much lower, I guess. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I know, Recoleta Center. I remember I was here; it was really, really beautiful. And then I think there's a Chinatown as well, from what I've seen. Obviously, the mate tea. There's some speakeasy bars, as I was saying, some really cool bars with gardens and rooftop terraces, by the way. Also, did you guys manage to go to additional Nomad meetup whilst you were there?
I don't think we did. We were in a group, but I don't think we ended up going to a meetup.
Yeah, fair enough. I've heard. So I've got friends who. It depends on the time of the year as well, but there are quite a few nomads as well. Now more and more coming, obviously. A lot of people are interested to buy property or start a business in Argentina. So, Nicole, talking about that, I know you guys also consult people, like investors, on real estate in South America and Latin America. So, tell us a bit about the real estate market in Argentina, how easy it is to get the property as a foreigner. You just told us they're very expensive. In Buenos Aires, I'm guessing outside must be way cheaper. So, what's going on with the market there?
Yeah, so as a foreigner, you can own land. You do need that tax ID card, which we can help with. You don't necessarily need to be a resident to have that or to own land. So that is quite nice. But the pricing, so of course, we talked about the rent pricing and how that is somewhat higher, especially when you're comparing that to other Latin American countries. The same is true, of course, with buying. If you're looking to buy, and of course, it'll depend on so many factors. So these are just general prices, depends on the area, depends on the location, it depends on what's already built there and the apartment or the house that's already there. But in Buenos Aires, there is not a lot of options, I will say, available within the city. You'll probably have to go more to the perimeter, the outskirts of the city itself. And that you could easily be looking at $1 million, probably starting, again, depending on the area and whatnot, but you're starting at around $500,000, which, for when we're comparing that to some other countries in Latin America, that can get you, potentially 2 different homes in Latin America. Even here in Mexico, it's very, very different. Real estate in Mexico, we've been looking, is also very interesting, but a topic for another time. Also, mortgages are, I think in Argentina, it's around 20% right now. So, and most of Latin America, mortgaging and financing is not going to be an option. It's just way too high of rates, unfortunately. But Argentina definitely falls into that category. So you really have to have investors or the cash in hand. And if you're looking outside of Buenos Aires, of course, it depends on the town, the city that you're looking for. It can start at around 200,000, I would say, which is from what I have seen working with clients and working with our agent. So it's not too bad, quite honestly. You're not going to be in the city. You're not going to be in the hustle and bustle. You're going to be minimum a few hours away from Buenos Aires driving, minimum, if not more. But some other areas that we went to were Cordoba and Mendoza. I think a lot of people know Mendoza, which is great for wine. Personally, I would never want to live there. Not much of a city, quite honestly, in my opinion. But Cordoba is the second biggest city, which is wild because it was not very big in Argentina. And there's definitely some interesting investment options there as well. Or if you're looking to live, probably wouldn't be somewhere I'm looking to live. It is quite a small town, I would say. But there are some lower options that you can get in terms of housing, starting at around 150, going to 200 as a minimum. So, it's going to look quite different from Buenos Aires to any of the other cities or just small towns in Argentina.
And are we talking about flats here or farms or farmland? When you talk property, what is it?
No, what I'm referring to is really just like a smaller piece of land with a house on it. And a lot of these homes are nicer homes. We don't really have too many people who are interested in farmland in Argentina. We do more so if a lot of our clients are looking for farmland or ranches. That's going to be Paraguay that we usually help them with, is what they're looking for, just from what we found working with clients. But what I'm referring to here is more so, like not a small plot of land, but a little piece of land with a nice house already built on it. That's more so if you're looking outside of Buenos Aires. If you're looking in Buenos Aires, you're going to be looking at an apartment, a nice apartment you can get for $500,000. And it really just depends on what you're looking for. If anybody is interested, they can reach out to us. I mean, there's so many different options in terms of if you're looking for the farmland, just the land with a house built in Buenos Aires, outside of Buenos Aires, there's so many different options. But what I would recommend as a first step, because the city of Buenos Aires, when you're going to Mendoza, when you're going to Cordoba, when you're going especially down to the south of Patagonia, you're going to find vastly different pricing and vastly different structures for housing, for land, if that's what you're looking into. So if you are interested, go on Facebook Marketplace, start looking at general pricing online, and then reach out to an agent so that you can get accurate and reliable pricing. Of course, you're not going to do a deal through a Facebook, but I find it's a good place to start looking, start getting ideas of what the pricing looks like. It might be a little bit more inflated on Facebook because they know that a lot of the foreigners are looking there, and some of it will be in English.
And is there a lot of bureaucracy and red tape when it comes to buying the property as a foreigner?
There can be. There definitely can be. I recommend having a lawyer. You're going to want to have a lawyer.
Even with lawyer, how much would that take to buy the property? How much?
It doesn't take too long in terms of time. I would say, you have to get that tax ID card first. So that will be the first step. And then there's a lot of notarizations, a lot of stamps that need to be done. But the lawyer can handle that on your behalf. So it's not a long time frame. I'd say probably average 6 months, which I wouldn't say is too long in terms of purchasing a property, but there will be a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of red tape. A lot of these countries in Latin America are like that, unfortunately. But if you have a lawyer, you have a notary, you kind of have the whole team behind you, it can be done somewhat streamlined without too much involvement from you, as long as you have the right documentation and whatnot with you.
Are the fees high for the solicitors, for the lawyer, and for the notary? Should people expect to pay like ridiculous amounts on these people?
No, it's usually included. So it'll be like a 3% or a 5% of the pricing for the house is what I find is pretty typical. I know that some agencies can do it differently, but that's usually how we do it. So it'll just be built in.
Okay, fair enough. And talking about money and finance, Nicole, so a lot of people ask me this, and I've got a lot of people like really curious to find out how can you manage with money in Argentina if you come with like foreign currency and you can't really withdraw money from the cash machine, is only $20 a day. So how if you want to go there and live like short term or medium term, how would you go about getting your money in the country and spending them?
Yeah. So coming into this conversation is the blue dollar. So how it works, what I recommend. Now, there's two options to bring money into the country. The first is Western Union, and the second is going to be literally just bringing, I recommend US dollars, bring the US dollars with you into the country. Of course, you want to make sure that you're below a certain limit. You don't want to trigger any alarms as you're going through customs, but bring maybe a few $1,000s. Of course, it very much so depends on how long you're going to stay there.
Yeah.
You can also use credit card. You will get some sort of, it's called the MEP rate. You will get some sort of a blue dollar rate. It won't be as good as cash, but you do get some sort of for a foreign credit card. So that's an option as well. I recommend bringing cash or Western Union.
Where do you exchange the cash then to the Argentinian pesos or?
Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. So I
Okay.
recommend, either the Western Union option or just bringing the cash with you. Once you have that US dollars, most places in Argentina are not going to accept that. They want the local pesos. So then you have to go and convert it. There's two options to convert it. There's the official conversion rate, and then there's the unofficial conversion rate. The official conversion rate, you'll just be able to find that online. You're not going to get a very good rate, quite honestly. But if you are looking at the unofficial rate, which is for the cash in terms of bringing in USD, they call that the blue dollar. And I think a lot of people get confused, and I was before arriving in Argentina as well, with what is the blue dollar, because a lot of people think it's a new kind of currency, or it's a different currency that they have created and maybe it looks blue. It's theory. So the blue dollar, it's not a currency. They only have the Argentinian peso as of right now, at least, as the country's currency. And what you'll do is you'll go to one of these unofficial, you don't want to go to a bank. You'll see them. They are called little trees. I forget the Spanish name, but it converts over to little trees. So when you're on the main walking streets, you'll see all of these men in the street going, cambio, cambio, like they're going to exchange your money. So you say, what's the rate? And it will help if you speak some Spanish. I will say they'll probably give you a much worse rate if you speak English. But if you know a little bit of Spanish, or, you practice your finance terms, your numbers before going in, I highly recommend that. But they'll give you the rate, and then I recommend going to a few different people, because they will give you somewhat different rates, similar rates, but they of course want to make money, so they'll give you somewhat different rates whenever you find the best rate. And I can't give you the rate now because it literally changes when we were there, it was changing every few hours. So we would only convert what we needed, because the next day we would get even more. You'll convert it with them. It's all unofficial. It's technically it's illegal, but they are absolutely everywhere. And then so they'll take your US dollars. And I think at the time, like, we would give them, let's say, 100 US dollars and essentially get back 250 US dollars in the local currency. Again, the exchange rates vary. We were there before the new president, so it could look much different now. But I highly recommend bringing in USD, Western Union yourself some money, and then getting that exchange rate.
Did you find it safe? Like, did you go inside a place, or was the deal done on the street? How was it?
Honestly, it's pretty safe. There were a few times we went to a few different exchanges just trying to find the best rates. And there were a few times where they get you to go into a building, and then you go down the stairs and you go around the corner, and it's beside some dodgy electronic shop, or it's in an electronic shop, and they just kind of have a window in the back. For the most part, it was pretty safe. The one thing that we were cautious of, and thankfully it did not happen to us, but it could happen to anybody, is if you are exchanging it, they know that you have quite a bit of money on you.
Right.
They'll get somebody to follow you and then just steal that money back. So what we would usually do is we would exchange it. We would stop, we would look around, we would talk, we would go grab an empanada, and then we would very slowly make our way back to the apartment, because if anybody's looking, you also don't want them to know where you're living as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a very good tip. Thanks for that, Nicole. I think it's very useful for a lot of people. Like, still take caution in these kind of places. People are on the lookout. Unfortunately, it is what it is. A lot of people go in these developing countries with the idea that it's as safe as anywhere in Europe or in the US, in the good places. I see people walking with noise canceling headphones on the street. It's crazy. Like, just be super aware in this kind of. Don't be really paranoid, but just be more aware than usual, and just blend in as much as you can.
Definitely.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks a lot, Nicole. It was really, really good to get all these tips, especially about the real estate. Just keep us up to date. We can share some materials. We're gonna leave a few links in the description. We can share it on our Instagram as well. And let's do another show maybe when you're there to give us some more news from the ground on the economy and the real estate prices, because I'm pretty sure you're gonna check a lot of places out when you're there. I'm also planning to come to Argentina maybe in January, so I'm really excited about that as well, to see how the country has changed in the past years, and hopefully for the better. So all good.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me here, Andrew. And I'm sure any links will be in the description below. But if anybody is interested to learn more, all of the handles are Work Wealth and Travel, YouTube, Instagram, and then the podcast as well.
Absolutely. We're going to leave all these links. And also, if you want to get in touch with Remote Tribe, we're at Remote Tribe Live everywhere. So just look us up. Thanks, Nicole. Talk to you soon. Take care.